The Secrets of Doctor Who is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, episode 176.
One day, I shall come back.
That's it. I've been renewed.
Is when a Time Lord's body wears out, he regenerates.
I'm a Time Lord. I'm not a human being. I walk in eternity.
Braveheart.
Change, my dear, and it seems on a moment too soon.
Unlimited rice pudding.
Physician, he looks wearing a bit thin.
Fantastic.
I am Scottish. I can complain about things.
Ooh. Should be fine.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series, Doctor Who. And today we're discussing something special, an animated special from 2009, featuring the 10th Doctor, called Dreamland. And joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Akin. Hi, Jimmy.
I didn't hate it.
And Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
Howdy, and me neither.
Right. That instant review that you get there right at the beginning. Folks, remember to like The Secrets of Doctor Who on Facebook, where it's facebook.com/Secrets of Doctor Who, and follow us on Twitter, where we're at SQPN. Retweet the things, share them, the episodes, and leave us comments. We'd love to interact with you on social media. So, as I mentioned, Dreamland, it was broadcast it was originally online in parts, and then eventually broadcast in November 2009. As part of the 2009 specials, the one-off specials leading up to the 10th Doctor regeneration. It was originally 6 mini episodes, and it's the 10th Doctor who doesn't have regular companions, but is accompanied by two folks named Cassie and Jimmy. So
he has one-off special companions.
Yep. Yes, exactly. All right, so it's animated, as we mentioned. This is probably the worst part of the... Yes. Yeah. It's probably the worst part of this story is the animation. It's really...
the animation is equivalent about, mid-90s video game.
Yeah. It's like a mid-90s video game cutscene or like Flash animation of the day.
It was... it's very clearly very rough 3D backgrounds. You can see the fact that they took, a rough 3D architecture and then put a more textured skin on it, and it looks awful.
And it's not simply because they couldn't do better animation at the time. I think actually one of the delimiting factors was the download speeds that were available at the time. They had to keep the animation simple so that people's video experience wouldn't always be freezing up on them. So they used like Flash animation to communicate it to people online. I have in my notes, stiff computer animation, lack of expressiveness in faces hurts acting. Mm-hmm. Everything feels understated and less emotional. Stiff, overdramatic postures and hurts comedy.
Yes, all true.
So everyone moves really stiffly and either underacts or overacts with their posture. There's no subtlety, and it just all feels very awkward.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the fact that this was a 6-parter originally. I did not know that going into this. I thought, here's a 45-minute, hour-long animated special. Fine, let's watch it. And I start noticing it has this strung-together feeling.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I started thinking, I bet this was originally in parts. And I looked it up while I was watching it. Sure enough, this was originally 6 parts, so it doesn't feel like a cohesive story.
And you could tell.
Every about 7 to 8 minutes, there's a cliffhanger.
Yes, you could tell there are these moments where it's like a commercial break or a cliffhanger sort of thing.
Well, what's funny is it I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but when I watched Classic Who as a kid, they did it in the movie format where they took, the 4-part, 6-part, 8, 10, or however long serial and smashed it all into one long movie.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what this felt like, where you'd watch, the 25 minutes and then there would be where you could tell a cliffhanger had been. But then, of course, they cut it, so then it continued on to the next scene.
That's true.
And this is exactly what it felt like when I was a kid watching Classic Who, because you'd come to this cliffhanger, it was clear, okay, this is where it cut, and now we're on to the next scene.
Right.
Yeah, but when you have that happen every 22 minutes, it's a very different experience than
Exactly.
have it happening multiple
Every
6
7
times in
minutes.
45 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, every 6-7 minutes. Yeah. One thing to mention, you talked about Cassie, played by Georgia Moffat, also known as Mrs. David Tennant.
And
These
the
days.
daughter of Peter Davison.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Jenny, the doctor's daughter.
Jenny.
Hi,
Yep.
Dad.
So as they were filming this, she had already played Jenny and was now, at this point, dating David Tennant in real life. So as they were filming this or recording this, not filming, and they would eventually be married in 2011. So that would be a couple years after this. So just to kind of place it in the context of these two people and how they knew each other. Also, a guest starring is a great actor, who's been in many genre films. David Warner plays Lord Aslock, the best sounding bug alien ever on Doctor Who, who has you'll know him from things like Tron and other famous roles. Who also once played the Doctor in Big Finish. He was the Doctor Unbound, apparently,
in one of the Unbound stories. Yeah.
So, very interesting connection.
So this story being called Dreamland, it's going to involve Area 51, Dreamland being one of the nicknames for Area 51.
Yep.
It also ties into the Roswell mythos, so we see some stuff from Roswell in mid-June of 1947. So that's our general time frame is, post-war, mid-20th century. And the Doctor shows up at a diner, and anytime the Doctor shows up at a diner, I want to know, is it going to turn into a TARDIS? But this one doesn't. And in the diner, the Doctor meets Jimmy Stalking Wolf, who's a Native American kind of Fonzie-like biker guy, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And also the waitress, Cassie Rice, who's played by Georgina Moffat. And even though in real life, Georgina Moffat was romantically interested in David Tennant, in this, Cassie Rice is romantically interested in Jimmy Stalking Wolf.
Yes, yes. She does not the love interest for the Doctor.
Nope.
So yeah, it begins with alien ship crashing in Roswell in 1947. Then the Doctor goes to the diner 11 years later, not in Roswell, New Mexico, but
58.
in Dry Springs, Nevada, which is apparently near Dreamland, Area 51, Groom Lake, etc.
Yep.
So they meet, and the Doctor sees an alien. He's there to get some chili, apparently, but then he sees an alien artifact on the counter and activates it, which then brings some men in black who want it. They show up and want it. Tim Cook comes in. Sorry, he looks like Apple CEO Tim Cook, the man in black. He comes in and demands they hand over the what he calls an ionic fusion bar, but they end up running out the back door. Jimmy calls the Doctor Doc, and he has to correct him. No, it's Doctor.
And I like how, just like Ace kept calling him the Professor, Jimmy keeps calling him Doc.
Yep.
Like,
yes. He doesn't
sorry,
care.
that's your name to me.
And Jimmy reveals that this is going to get confusing if Jimmy the character reveals that a monster has been eating cattle at this ranch, so they go to check it out, and they find what the Doctor identifies as a Viperox battle drone, which when it shoots at them, an Army helicopter shows up and blasts it with a missile. Conveniently, good timing. And then the helicopter lands. It's a Huey, so this is early 60s.
It's
soldiers
1958, actually.
58. Yep.
Yeah, that might be a little early for Hueys then. But anyway, the helicopter lands, and the soldiers take them into custody and to take them to Groom Lake, aka Dreamland, aka Area 51.
I do have a rant here, though. I'm
I do
offended.
too.
I am a veteran of the United States Air Force. Groom Lake was never Groom Lake Army Air Base.
Yes.
First of all, it was purchased by the Air Force after the Air Force was founded. It has always been Groom Lake Air Force Base.
Right.
Do not call it Army. That's an offense to all of us who served in the Air Force.
Also, historically inaccurate, Jimmy Stalking Wolf is aware of rumors connected with it and aliens and stuff, and it's like, no, this is way too early for that. There were no such rumors in 1958.
The base, it only existed about 3 years at that point, so people really
wouldn't know much
about it yet.
Yeah. And
also, we do have some other appearances of Area 51 in the Whoniverse. In the 11th Doctor's time, he's kept there in Day of the Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And also in the Sarah Jane adventure, Prisoner of the Jadoon, not Fugitive of the Jadoon, but Prisoner of the Jadoon goes to Area 51, or has it mentioned anyway.
Okay. So when they're in custody, waiting for whatever at Area 51, Cassie worries that the Reds are going to nuke them before they are able to develop flying cars. And the Doctor at first thinks she's talking about Manchester United, the football team, which I thought was fun.
I guess.
The Reds. Yeah, they wear red jerseys. And then the main human villain in this at the first anyway, sort of villain, Colonel Stark, has them taken to a lab for a mind wipe, where Cassie says, like, you can't do that because we're U.S. citizens. And Jimmy says, they're the U.S. Army. They've been doing whatever they want since the Bear River Massacre.
Right. Which actually,
Yes.
I learned a little bit more Western history. I'd never heard of this one, but it actually was a massacre just over the Idaho border from Montana. So it's one of the first tribal massacres. You know, the big one that especially people around here know well is Custer's Last Stand, or the Battle of Little Bighorn,
which was kind of a reverse massacre.
Yeah. So but there's a lot of those. You know, I also, about 70 miles from here is Chief Joseph's Last Stand, where he surrendered. Is just south of the town of Chinook from here. So it's kind of interesting. Like I said, I hadn't heard of this particular one, but that's something that kind of resonates again with my area, because a lot of that happened in this area.
I was kind of curious why they chose the Bear River Massacre as opposed to something more well known like Wounded Knee or the Trail of Tears. But like this, again, Bear River is kind of an odd choice here.
I think this was the first one, the first major one, even if it's not as well known as like Trail of Tears or Wounded Knee or Custer's Last Stand or something like that.
Also, Trail of Tears is not going to be associated with the Army in the same way, since it wasn't a battle.
Right. That's true.
It was a forced migration.
Okay. So that's interesting. So Colonel Stark at this point doesn't seem at all curious why the Doctor seems to know so much about the Viperox, by the way. Cassie threatens to tell the president, like she's going to call him on the phone.
Sure.
I like the kind of naive, naivete about this. It's refreshing. On the other hand, and it's kind of nostalgic, on the other hand, I kind of wonder, because this is a British production, and I see a lot of British productions that when they deal with Cold War issues, they make Americans, Americans are talking about the Reds and the commies and stuff like that. And I don't know if they use that language in the UK at the time, but my impression is folks in Europe were just as scared, if not more so, of the Soviet Union. Yeah. Because if anything started happening, it was going to be, their front lawn was going to be the battlefield. Exactly. And so I kind of wonder about this American, antipathy towards the Reds, the commies. It's like, I think there was probably some of that over in Britain too.
So typical bad planning here. We see it seems like a bad idea to have the controls for the mind wipe gas to be inside the room with them.
Yeah, major design flaw.
Yeah, you have to turn it on and then run out of the room really quick. Also, it's a very big room. Maybe a smaller room would make the gas work faster. Just suggestions here on my part. Just
wouldn't have as much time to get out.
Yeah. It's the size of like half a gymnasium, basically. I mean, this place is huge. Yeah.
But the Doctor escapes, of course, and no one monitors them as they're being gassed too. There's no window to monitor them. Turning off the dial for the gas seems to suck all the gas out of the room immediately, which is handy. When they escape, when they ask how they're going to escape, they ask the Doctor. He says he loves 1958 because no one has seen Die Hard or Alien or any of the sequels.
Yeah, so we're going to use the vents. We're going to crawl through the vents.
Which are always big enough for people to crawl through. So when they get out of the vent and they're in the hallway, an alarm goes off while they're escaping, so they sneak into a lab where they discover there's one of the famous Greys, the alien Greys from Roswell, is inside a cell. And there's also, meanwhile, a convenient elevator to the surface because they're underground in that lab. So it's very convenient to have an elevator right next to your very top secret alien prisoner.
Exactly.
So that's a good idea, but
We
you know,
got to have some way to get the top secret alien down there.
Yes, this is true. This is true. So this is when we discover that Colonel Stark is actually in cahoots with the Viperox. Lord Aslock is in his office, and Stark. The Viperox Aslock threatens Stark. It's "Fail me, and your world will pay the price," as usual, which is interesting. We get a hint at there's something going on here, and the Doctor and the others end up in a hangar where they find the original alien ship, presumably belonging to that Grey that's in the cell. They rush on board while the soldiers stand around and watch them do it, and then take off in it. And the Doctor manages to fly it after a fashion, badly.
And then they get shot down.
Yes, some nice F-100s. Yes, they end up outside the ghost town of Solitude, because if you're gonna name your old west town, you're gonna call it something like Solitude or Mercy. And
Oh.
Well, if you name it Solitude, you're kind of asking to become a ghost town.
This is
true. If you don't want your town to go out of business, you want to give it a name like the Hot Spot or Where Everybody Comes, or something that's going to draw people in.
Or Greenland, like
Greenland.
Yeah, there you go.
So let's see. Then so while they're in there, they're looking around. Doctor finds a lamp that's over 100 years old that apparently still works, and Jimmy wanders off into the back room where there's a giant hole, and he gets grabbed by a Viperox drone and dragged down into the tunnel, and so the Doctor and Cassie have to follow. They end up...
And there's a Viperox queen down there.
Yes, they find Lord Aslock, and they also find the Horde, the Viperox Horde. The Doctor gets Aslock to admit they're not there to invade Earth, but to find their enemy, which will turn out to be the Grey. Cassie throws the lantern at them and starts a fire. And the Doctor's like, "What'd you do that for? I was just getting to the good part." People keep interrupting him when he's trying to get information. And that's where they end up finding a bunch of Viperox eggs and the queen. And then something comes out of the egg and lands on the face. And no, that's different. Aliens.
That's alien.
Sorry, I got myself confused.
But we find out that the Doctor has bad reaction from royals. Royals don't like him around.
Yes, queens particularly do not like having the Doctor around. So they run down a tunnel. Well, this is true. Yep. They run down a tunnel, find an old mine, and of course, if you have an old mine, there's going to be a mine car, and you're going to get in it, and you're going to go for a wild mine car ride.
Thanks, Indiana Jones.
Yes. Interesting use of the sonic screwdriver I haven't seen before. He manages to sonic bolts out of a roof support. They sort of float magnetically out of it or something. Very interesting. And that ends up collapsing the tunnel on the Viperox so they can escape. But at the end of the line, so to speak, they find the Men in Black, including Tim Cook, who we now find out is called Mr. Dread, which I have to give the Doctor credit, in the writers, that they actually call attention to how kind of a silly a name that is. Mr. Dread is like over the top, dramatic name. It turns out the Men in Black are from something called the Alliance of Shades. Is this unique to this story? Do we ever hear about them anywhere else?
I believe it's unique to this story, and they're also robots.
Yes, yes.
And they're robots with a mission. They're like here to cover up stuff on planets that aren't ready for alien contact, sort of.
Who are apparently doing a really bad job.
Yes.
Especially given the whole history of Doctor Who.
I almost wish they would have done more like, Shadow Proclamation or something like that, just to give it like an actual connection,
Which we've heard of at this point. I mean, Shadow Proclamation is from a couple seasons before this.
They also, the Doctor kind of hangs a lantern on the fact that they're not doing real great, because he drops a hint that, like, by the 1970s, you guys are totally defunct.
Right. They just give up. And just as the Doctor's about to figure out what's going on with them, Jimmy's grandpa shows up and disables the robots with one arrow each right into the CPU, and meaning that he's seen these guys before and knows how to kill them, apparently. So Grandpa Night Eagle takes them to see a different Grey, who is the companion to the one that's a prisoner, who tells the tale that the other Grey is his wife, and she was an ambassador building an alliance against the Viperox, and was shot down over Earth to prevent that alliance, and so the Viperox slaughtered their people, and he came looking for her.
Yeah. Now, when we first meet Night Eagle, he explains that we came here, so this is the reason they came in and rescued them from the Men in Black, They came here because they saw the disc that the Doctor was flying fall from the sky, and they thought more had come.
Right.
And the Doctor says, more of who? And I'm like, I'm sorry, more of whom? This is the objective case. We almost never have cases in English, but for pronouns, we have a subjective case and an objective case, and this is the objective case. More of whom? Doctor whom, okay?
More of, I guess they were, if you think, I didn't think about it at the time, but maybe they were kind of trying to make a pun, more of who. He is Doctor Who. It might have been.
I think you're giving him too much credit.
Yeah. They shouldn't have gone with bad grammar to do it.
I'm not normally a grammar Nazi, but we almost never get to use cases in English.
Yes, so use it when we can.
Yeah.
So Colonel Stark shows up, takes them all prisoner, takes them back to the base, where Lord Aslock reveals that Ryvesh, the Grey, the one who was just captured, is a genetic scientist who developed a weapon that's targeted to kill all the Viperox based on their DNA, like it targets Viperox only. And the Doctor says
even this huge war.
Yes. Doctor says even that is very bad because who's to say the Viperox won't discover a better way to live when that becomes a bit of a theme for the rest of the episode. So Stark's goal, the reason he's working with Aslock, is once they take the weapon from the Ryvesh the Grey, not to be confused with Gandalf the Grey, they will modify it to target the Soviets. I'm not sure what makes the Soviets uniquely different genetically from everyone else in the world, but
vodka.
It would be doable, but it would involve complex genetics they didn't have in 1958.
Okay, maybe the Viperox were going to help with that.
Yeah.
So it turns out, meanwhile,
speaking of genetics,
yes,
we have a serious, glaring problem that's totally obvious in this animated video, and that we need to talk about.
Okay,
and that is the issue of representation.
Okay,
because the actor playing Jimmy Stalking Wolf, who is a Native American, is not a Native American. They should have got a British Native American to play him. Instead, they got a white actor. So we have whitewashing going on here. Then his grandpa, Night Eagle, who is also Native American, is also not played by a British Native American. He's played by a black man. So we have blackwashing going on here. And neither of the actors playing the Greys are actually gray.
And they're not aliens either.
Well, if we'd gotten some colonial silver ahead of time, we could have taken care of that with some Argeria. That's an episode of the Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World from April 1st. Go check it out. So the Doctor. So turns out, by the way, the Mr. Dread, the Men in Black, shows up again, and it turns out he's been reprogrammed by Aslock to seek out what he called the ionic fusion bar, which turns out is really Ryvesh's weapon. So that's why. The Doctor realizes these Alliance of Shades robots have been doing a really bad job of seeking out alien technology. Somehow the Doctor manages to grab the weapon and run away with it before anyone can shoot him. Everyone in this are not only they have bad reaction time, they're bad shots too. I mean, it's just really bad. And I have to point out here, Colonel Stark is a caricature of the worst characters in Doctor Strangelove. This is like the worst, like homage to Doctor Strangelove. He's so like a combination of several really bad characters in it, with his anti-Soviet mania and all that sort of stuff. So
the George C. Scott character.
Yes.
Buck Turgidson.
That's right. The Doctor says once the weapon is reprogrammed, Aslock is really going to unleash his army on the Earth, but Stark won't believe him. But finally convinces him, and so when Aslock shows up, he has heard, because the Viperox have really good hearing, he kills Ryvesh, apparently, and runs off, because without Ryvesh, they can't activate the Viperox weapon. But Ryvesh isn't dead, he's only mostly dead, so he has something to live for. So they can't take him to his ship to heal him, because it's in the vault, and something got loose in the vault, we were told. So the Doctor is now, this is interesting. The Doctor's now hot on using the weapon to wipe out the Viperox. Now he wants to use the weapon. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Or at least he's threatening to. One of the things I have in my notes, you just used the word interesting. And I have in my notes that here, which corresponds to episode 4 of the 6, it's starting to get interesting. So,
Right. Yeah, it is actually. There's a lot going on here, and it does start to get interesting.
And by the way, is it the vault or is it Warehouse 13?
That's what I was thinking. I was actually wondering if we were going to see like a box labeled, Ark of the Covenant somewhere.
Yeah, that's the other one.
So it's a big vault, which means there's apparently a lot of alien tech down there. And the Doctor's in there with the other Grey. I forget what Suruba Vela. That's what her name is. Meanwhile, he sends Jimmy and Cassie to go get the TARDIS. But while they're in town, the Viperox drones are emerging from the ground and start destroying everything, including the town.
Also, Cassie kisses Jimmy.
Yes, Cassie kisses Jimmy. So we get the love theme going here. So what we find that what's loose in the vault is a swarm of Scorpius flies that form a collective brain and wants to eat the Doctor and Suruba Vela, yeah, not Velba. and the Doctor and Suruba walk out like snails with a box over their head. And the Doctor says, "Oh, it's easy to find our way out. It's 87 steps this way and 57 that way. You always count your steps, so just in case you need to walk out blindfolded." It's good advice, frankly.
Good to know. I wonder how many people have ever done that, ever.
Yes,
the Doctor apparently is one.
Yeah, I've started doing that myself. There's a good pun here. Some men are born great. Others have crates thrust upon them. That's a good dad joke there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They can't get into the base the normal way, of course, so that's why the Doctor sent Cassie and Jimmy to go get the TARDIS. They're going to fly the TARDIS in. The Doctor then prevents them from wiping out every Viperox in the universe because he says they'll eventually become peace-loving people, over the centuries, and they have an important role in the universe. Instead, they activate the weapon. He plugs it into the TARDIS, and it makes a loud noise to make them run away in their ship. They need the weapon to make a loud noise. Not sure what the point of the weapon was.
The weapon is tuned to their DNA, and so it irritates their central nervous system so badly that they just have to run away. And of course, the TARDIS has a killer sound system, so of course that helps too.
Yes.
I have in my notes interesting bio-tardigrade ship.
That's right. The Doctor then leaves the weapon with Colonel Stark, but tweaked so that it keeps the Viperox at least a light year away from Earth, so they can come back and enact their revenge, etc., etc. And that's about where we end things. So that's the episode. What do you guys think of the Dreamland?
Couple small things. In 1947, when they show the ship crash, it shows the sign to Roswell for I-25. A couple of things. First of all, the interstate system didn't exist until Eisenhower signed it into effect in 1955. Secondly, I-25 runs about 100 miles west of Roswell. So this is obviously Brits when whoever's writing this went, oh, Interstate 25, that goes through Western United States somewhere near Roswell. That's close enough.
Actually, if you're going to make up a highway going through somewhere in Middle America, it should always be Route 66, whether Route 66 was anywhere near there or not.
I think it actually was fairly close, but not exact, but closer than I-25 anyways. Secondly, there's a great line when they're going down, into Groom Lake, into Dreamland, about Colonel Stark, where are they taking us? Well, I doubt he has a penthouse apartment. I wonder if that's a reference to Tony Stark, a.k.a. Iron Man.
I know. I kept having Iron Man flit through my brain every time we have Colonel Stark referenced.
I ranted about, calling it Groom Lake Army Air Base, but I will give them credit. They drew the F-100 fighter, which would have been the state-of-the-art fighter at the time, very well. That was actually really nicely done. I was kind of impressed by that. Yep. And then Suruba Velik, Jimmy, did her voice sound familiar?
I don't remember at the moment. I may. Who was she?
She was voiced by Lisa Bowerman, who played Kara on Survival, the cat warrior that tried to convert Ace and then eventually gave her life to protect Ace in that last episode, Survival. And the voice was the same digital. Of course, probably how they produced it was different because we're talking 30 years difference, 20 years difference.
20 years, yeah.
20 years difference, but it was the same effect. So it sounded almost identical.
Oh, interesting.
I hadn't noticed that.
That's cool.
I liked the fact that the Viperock's eyes would squeak. They had this little squeak noise that their eyes would make. Also, they had both human teeth and mandibles, which is just creepy.
Yep.
If it has both human teeth and mandibles, it's like that's messed up. Georgina's American accent was pretty good.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I want to give credit. I mean, we often pick on accents, Perpigillion Brown, but this was a good one. At the end, the doctor's like going back to the Ming Dynasty to get dim sum. I just like that.
Yeah.
And he came here for chili. So, and I like that. It's like, I need chili made before a certain date because it tastes better.
That you can only get at a roadside greasy spoon.
Yes.
And then the doctor at the end encourages the companion romance. It ends with them holding hands, which is nice. So I like that. So I did not hate it. I also did not love it.
Yes.
Especially the first 3/4 or first 2/3 of it.
It had especially early on, it had a very definite Saturday morning Justice League feel to some of it.
Not the new Justice League is way better than that.
No. When I was a kid,
Super Friends is what you mean.
Super Friends. Yeah. It had a bit of a Super Friends feel to that. But you're right. I mean, once I got over the bad animation, the second half had a pretty interesting Doctor Who story, and it had different levels and different, people were not just flat cardboard characters. Stark had good and bad. He was a bad guy that became not a bad guy. Maybe not a good guy, but not a bad guy.
Well, and by that point, it had really come together. A lot of what's happening in the first half is just moving from one place to another. It's a series of strung together bits rather than a cohesive story.
Yes. Yeah. So by the end, it was much better story. It was. I mean, for a an animated web based cartoon, it was not bad. Not bad. I mean, it's a faint phrase, but yeah. So, and then after this point, what happens in the Doctor Who universe is after this is the very next thing that gets aired is the 2-part regeneration special, which we've already talked about. So you can check out what we had to say about that. And that's it. And that's the end of the David Tennant era. So apart from the regeneration, this is the last David Tennant production, as the 10th Doctor. In the Russell T Davies era, there's always asterisks on everything in Doctor Who, frankly. but let's stick with that. So if we're done with that, we do have a little bit of listener feedback on our recent episode on, actually maybe not so recent, the episode 170, The Next Doctor, where it was the Christmas special. Kathleen Ross sent us an email. She said, this was in reference to when we were talking about the villainess of that episode who showed up at the funeral, and then brought along the Cybermen.
Right.
She says, hey guys, you should Google 18th and 19th century funeral customs and practices regarding women. Turns out that not having women take part in the funeral processions and graveside services was a real thing. The show got it right.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I guess my 21st century egalitarianism tripped me up on that.
And I wonder if that was certain cultures, as in like, Great Britain and maybe even the United States or in Canada, something like that, or if it was just something that was just kind of a British thing.
Right, that would be something interesting to look at. But
out in the Old West, maybe the women went to the funerals. I don't know, or maybe not. I'd have to check. It's an empirical question. Sometimes I get tripped up by stuff like that. Years ago, this was before I was a caller. When I was just a square dancer. I went into a dance and there was a local caller calling it, and she was saying in a break she was commenting to me about, and I don't remember how she said it, but it was like, notice anything different about me? And it's like, no. And she was, and I was just meeting her for the first time. I didn't know what she was referring to. It turned out she was remarking on the fact she was a woman. And apparently at one stage of square dance callers were overwhelmingly men. And so it was a bit unusual when she was an older woman. And so when she was starting out as a caller, it was very unusual for there to be a woman caller. And this was significant to her. But to me, it was like, okay, you're a woman. Great. Let's call.
as a married man, whenever I hear, "Did you notice anything different about me today?" That's when my internal warning, Will Robinson, back to the ship. It goes off.
I saw the sweat pouring off your brow as soon as Jimmy said that.
I'm like, oh, flashbacks. All right. I think that about does it for today. We do want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Doctor Who, including Jeremy, Wendy, Bradley, Cynthia, and Melanie. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. We'd also like to thank Victor Lambs, who edits the show for us every week. And that's it from us. What did you think of Dreamland? Did you get a chance to watch it? Let us know what you thought by commenting on the show at sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or by sending an email to drwho@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the first Doctor story, The Dalek Invasion of Earth.
Ooh, fun.
Until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing The Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thank you, Dom.
Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Oh, poor Susan.
A preview for next week. And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, take me to your leader. Allons-y.
Right. This is going to be fun.